Hi BookTube, this is Juan from Just One Reader. Welcome back to my channel. Today I will be doing my reading wrap-up for the month of May, as well as a very loose, very tentative, flexible TBR for the month of June. So very quickly, because these are books that I have mentioned quite a lot in previous videos, these are the books that I read in the month of May. I read only 6 books in the month of May, which was not as good as my April was. In April, I read around 11 books. And I would attribute this to the fact that in May, I was a little busier, but also I didn't have a very well-curated TBR. Just the books that I ended up reading in May, it was not as great a reading month as April was. So I really hope that for June I can prepare a better curated TBR, just books that will be more rewarding, you know, because something that happened in May actually is that I tried to venture out of my comfort zone and read books that are not what I usually read, or yeah, I just wanted to expand my horizons, which I'm very glad that I did. I'm very proud and very happy that I did, but some of these books were better than others. So the first book that I finished in May was Ohio by Stephen Markley. I would say that this was my favorite book of the month, actually. So this is a literary fiction novel. I gave it 4.5 stars, which is the highest rating that I can give to a book without going all the way, 5 stars. 5 stars book for me are very personal. It's like falling in love with a book in a very unique, special kind of way. So this was as good as it gets. It was very thought-provoking, but equally thrilling, and it was just a great, great novel. The second book that I finished in May was Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. This was a reread. I had read this book when I was back in school many years ago, and I was able to really appreciate this time around the use of the English language. I really, really liked her prose. But that being said, the book was not as surprising or as... it didn't pack the punch that it did the first time. That's just because of the reread. But I really enjoyed picking this book up again and watching the National Theatre production that they did in London with Benedict Cumberbatch. I saw that, and it was a very interesting exercise to read the novel and then immediately watch the production and think about, you know, comparing and contrasting them. And I gave this, I think, 3 stars. It was just, it's, you know, it's a tough book to rate. The next book that I completed was middle grade fantasy fiction, Island of the Ants by Eva Ibbotson. This was very fun. It's about this island where these children are kidnapped and they are taken to this island to take care of some magical creatures, and it's the usual Eva Ibbotson fun, magical, whimsical romp. If you enjoy these kinds of things, Eva Ibbotson, J.K. Rowling, Philip Pullman, Roald Dahl kind of situations, then this would be very, very fun. I gave this 3 stars as well. Then I read the most disappointing book of the entire year for me, and that was John Wyndham's The Day of the Triffids. I thought this was just very, very bad. Very disappointing, just not even bad. It was cheesy and sort of cheap fiction, but the beginning was so promising and so interesting, and then it just quickly went downhill. So yeah, this was just not good. It was very boring and nothing consequential was really going on. The story has a very cool premise, but it just went on another different, very uninteresting direction. So no thank you. I gave it 2 stars, and that is very positive. Then I read Weird Things Customers Say in Bookstores. which is a sort of collection of anecdotes by Jen Campbell and some other booksellers, but it was mainly put together by Jen Campbell, who used to work or still does work, I don't know, at a bookstore in London. And these are just wonderful collections of brief scenes, snippets of anecdotes where a customer comes into the bookstore and asks the bookseller the most ridiculous things. It's hilarious, but it also gives a lot of insight into how strange people can be. People who come into a bookstore, they can be fabulous and warm and whimsical and quirky, but they can also be extremely rude, extremely nonsensical, and oblivious to everything. But it was so funny. I gave it 4 stars. It was delicious, and I really want to pick up the sequel. And finally, the last book that I completed in the month of May, but I feel like this book counts as 10 books or 20, is Hilary Mantel's The Mirror and the Light, book 3 in the Thomas Cromwell trilogy. It took me around 2 weeks to read this book, even maybe probably longer, which in all honesty feels like a very good time to have read this book. A lot of people really take their time reading this book just because it is very slow and very complex, and yeah, some people just really want to take it in very small doses. But I was sort of getting frustrated with the pacing and with some other frustrations that I talked about in my recent Friday Reads video. So I really wanted the story to move on. Essentially, I feel like this book was very mixed for me. I can recognize that I, as a reader, I'm not the kind of reader, I'm not the target audience for this book. I felt lost, confused, frustrated, annoyed when this book felt like history and like ridiculously politic heavy dialogue conversations. There's a lot of negotiations and yeah, it's just a lot of negotiations and people plotting and talking back and forth, and sometimes that felt very repetitive and very tiresome. That being said, I really loved the other parts of this book where we got to focus more on Cromwell and Henry and the rest of the characters who are more important to me. I thought the writing in certain special places glowed and astonished me. I really liked the ending. I really liked how the ending of this novel, and therefore the entire trilogy, really ties in nicely with the beginning of Wolf Hall. It's like a circle of, it's the circle of life. It's just like a perfect sort of ending to the trilogy. Have I just made a fool of myself? Anyway, so I gave this book 3 stars in the end, which sounds like a very low rating, especially for a book as highly valued and as highly regarded as this one. But it really is just a rating that to me signifies how mixed I was. It was fabulous and then incredibly boring and frustrating. So 3 stars, that's the middle of the road. So those were the books that I finished in May. Now let's go to my TBR for June. And again, this is going to be a very loose, flexible TBR. I will probably end up making some changes as I go along. So the first book that I know I will be reading in June for sure is The Overstory by Richard Powers. This is a winner of the Pulitzer Prize, and this is going to be a body read, or rather part of a group reading, I guess it's a massive body read situation that we are doing. This is thanks to Leo from A Little Book Life. He chose this, so we're doing a read along of this in June, and it's going to take the entire month. Then I want to read The Fermata by Nicholson Baker. This is a very obscure novel that I don't think a lot of people have read here. So I'm really looking forward to it. It's short and it's supposed to be about sex and a sort of weird fantasy device. I think it's about a man character who can stop time and use that ability for sexual purposes. So that sounds like it could go in multiple directions. So I'm gonna see what that's about. Then I want to continue with the Sally Lockhart Quartet by Philly Pullman, which is a reread. It's a reread that I've been doing this. I think I started in 2019, and I read the first 2 books in the quartet. And now 2020, I will continue with book 3, The Tiger in the Well. I remember that the first time that I read this book series when I was growing up, this one used to be my favorite. So I'm gonna see how that holds up. And then I have a couple of novels that I hope I can read, but again, this depends on my mood. So I have All the Birds Singing by Evie Wilde. I've heard so many people rave about this book and how strange and different and lyrical it is. And so I really want to finally try it for myself. And then I have a book that was recommended a long time ago by Sean the Book Maniac. This is The Man from Primrose Lane by James Renner. This is a very creepy thriller, I think, set in Ohio. And finally, if life still allows me, I will try Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. This book is so heavy, it's so compact. It doesn't look like it's that long, but it's 1,000 pages long, so it's very, very heavy and sturdy. I have no idea what Gone with the Wind is about. I know that there is a very famous movie, have no idea what it is. Absolutely no idea whatsoever. So love that. I really love going into these very popular, important novels or pieces of work, of literature, and just discovering them from zero. So that's my potential TBR for June. Please let me know in the comment section down below if you have read or are planning to read any of the books that I mentioned today. Thanks for watching. I am Just One Reader, and I will see you on the next video.